The city was restless that night, rain streaking the windows of passing cars, neon lights flickering in puddles. FBI Director Samuel Carter drove home alone, his mind heavy with the weight of a nation's secrets. He was a man used to power, to respect, to the silent nods that followed his every step in Washington. But tonight, he was just another face behind the wheel, tired and eager to see his family. As Samuel turned onto a quiet street, red and blue lights exploded in his rearview mirror. He pulled over, heart pounding, not with guilt, but with the old, familiar anxiety that came from years in law enforcement. He rolled down his window, hands visible on the steering wheel, waiting for the officer to approach. Officer Mark Riley was young, ambitious, and on edge. He'd been on the force for 3 years, patrolling the city's toughest neighborhoods. He'd seen things that haunted his sleep: violence, desperation, injustice. Tonight, he was determined to do everything by the book. But when he saw the expensive car and the man inside, something in him tensed. "License and registration," Riley barked, hand resting on his holster. Samuel complied, moving slowly, announcing every action. "I'm reaching for my wallet," he said, voice calm. Riley's eyes narrowed. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered, gun drawn. Samuel froze, shock and disbelief warring on his face. "Officer, Out! Now!" Riley shouted, voice trembling. Samuel stepped out, rain soaking his suit. He raised his hands, trying to defuse the situation. "Officer, I'm the director of the FBI. There's been a mistake." Riley didn't lower his weapon. "On the ground!" he yelled. Samuel complied, lying on the wet pavement, humiliation burning in his chest. He heard the click of handcuffs, felt the cold metal bite into his wrists. Neighbors gathered, phones out, recording the scene. Samuel's badge fell from his pocket, glinting in the streetlight. Riley saw it, confusion flickering across his face. He called for backup, his voice shaky. Within minutes, squad cars arrived, sirens wailing. A senior officer recognized Samuel, rushing to intervene. "What the hell are you doing?" he demanded, pulling Riley aside. The truth unraveled quickly. Samuel was released, his dignity bruised but intact. Riley stood by his patrol car, hands shaking, realizing the gravity of his mistake. The senior officer apologized profusely, but Samuel's eyes were distant, haunted. "This isn't about me," he said quietly. "It's about something much bigger." News of the incident spread like wildfire. Videos flooded social media, sparking outrage and debate. Some saw it as a tragic misunderstanding, others as proof of a broken system. Samuel was thrust into the spotlight, his private pain now a public spectacle. He faced questions from the press, from Congress, from his own family. But Samuel refused to let anger consume him. He saw in Riley not a villain, but a young man shaped by fear and a flawed culture. He requested a private meeting with Riley, wanting to understand, to bridge the gap. Riley arrived, eyes downcast, expecting condemnation. Instead, Samuel listened. He heard about the pressures, the fear, the moments of doubt that haunted every shift. "I'm sorry," Riley whispered, voice cracking. "I thought I was doing my job." Samuel nodded, seeing himself in the young officer, the same desire to protect, the same fear of failure. "We all make mistakes," he said. "But we have to learn from them. We have to do better." The department launched an investigation. Riley was suspended, then charged with misconduct. The trial was swift, the evidence clear. He was sentenced to jail, his career in ruins. Some cheered, others mourned. Samuel watched from afar, heart heavy. He knew that justice was necessary, but he also knew that true change required more than punishment. Samuel used his platform to call for reform. He spoke about the need for empathy, for training, for a culture that valued humanity over fear. He met with officers, with activists, with families who had lost loved ones to similar encounters. He listened, learned, and led by example. Riley, in jail, faced his own reckoning. He wrote letters to Samuel, to his family, to the people he had wronged. He found solace in small acts of kindness, helping other inmates, volunteering for counseling sessions. He began to understand the depth of his mistake, the pain he had caused. Months later, Samuel visited Riley in jail. They spoke for hours. Two men changed by a single night. Samuel forgave Riley, urging him to use his experience to help others. Riley promised to do better, to be better. Their meeting was quiet, but its impact rippled outward. Samuel's ordeal became a catalyst for change. The department overhauled its training, focusing on de-escalation and empathy. Officers were encouraged to see the people they served, not just the threats they feared. Samuel's story inspired others to speak out, to demand justice, to believe in redemption. Years later, Samuel and Riley met again, this time at a community event. Riley had rebuilt his life, working with at-risk youth, teaching them about choices and consequences. Samuel smiled, pride shining in his eyes. "We're all more than our worst moments," he said. "What matters is what we do next." The aftermath of that rainy night lingered in the city's consciousness. Samuel Carter, once a symbol of authority, now became a symbol of vulnerability and transformation. He found himself invited to town halls and police academies, not as a figurehead, but as a witness to the human cost of fear and misjudgment. He spoke not with anger, but with a quiet urgency that made people listen. Samuel's family struggled with the fallout. His wife, Elaine, was shaken by the footage of her husband on the ground, hands cuffed, dignity stripped away. Their daughter, Maya, faced questions at school, her classmates divided between outrage and disbelief. Samuel comforted them, but he also encouraged open conversations about justice, fear, and forgiveness. "We can't heal what we don't face," he told them. Meanwhile, Officer Riley's world had collapsed. In jail, he replayed the night over and over, haunted by the look in Samuel's eyes. He wrote apology letters he never sent and spent long hours in the prison library reading about justice, bias, and the history of policing. He joined a restorative justice group where he listened to stories of pain and survival, and slowly began to understand the ripple effects of his actions. Samuel's advocacy grew bolder. He met with police chiefs, lawmakers, and activists, urging them to see the humanity in every encounter. He pushed for body cameras, mental health support, and community policing initiatives. He insisted that real change required not just new policies, but a new mindset, one rooted in empathy and accountability. The city's police department, under public pressure, launched a series of reforms. Officers attended workshops on implicit bias and de-escalation. Community leaders were invited to ride along on patrols, building trust and understanding. The department's culture began to shift, slowly but unmistakably, toward one of service rather than suspicion. Riley's trial had been public, but his journey afterward was private. He struggled with shame and regret, but also with a growing sense of purpose. He began to mentor younger inmates, sharing his story as a warning and a lesson. "You can't undo what's done," he told them, "but you can choose what you do next." His words resonated, and he found a measure of peace in helping others avoid his mistakes. Samuel and Riley's paths crossed again when a local news station invited them to speak at a forum on justice and reconciliation. The room was tense, filled with people who had lost faith in the system. Samuel spoke first, sharing his story with honesty and humility. Riley followed, his voice trembling as he admitted his failures and asked for forgiveness, not just from Samuel, but from the community. The forum ended in silence, then applause. People lined up to thank them, to share their own stories of pain and hope. Samuel and Riley realized that their encounter, as painful as it had become a catalyst for healing. They agreed to work together, visiting schools and community centers, teaching the next generation about the power of empathy and the importance of second chances. Samuel's work was not without critics. Some accused him of being too soft, of letting Riley off easy. Others said he was exploiting his story for attention. But Samuel knew the truth. Real justice was not about vengeance, but about transformation. He saw the change in Riley, in the police department, in the city itself. He knew that redemption was possible, even in the darkest moments. Riley's sentence eventually ended, but his work was just beginning. He joined a nonprofit dedicated to police reform, using his experience to train officers in empathy and de-escalation. He spoke at conferences, always crediting Samuel for giving him a second chance. He knew he could never erase the pain he'd caused, but he could honor it by helping others do better. Samuel's family healed too. Elaine became an advocate for victims of police misconduct, while Maya started a club at her school focused on justice and reconciliation. The Carters found strength in their shared experience, using it to build bridges rather than walls. As the years passed, the story of Samuel Carter and Mark Riley became a touchstone in the city's ongoing conversation about justice. Their unlikely partnership was featured in newspapers and documentaries, sparking debate and reflection far beyond their community. Samuel was invited to Washington to testify before Congress, sharing his experience and advocating for national police reform. He spoke with conviction, but also with compassion. We must remember that every badge is worn by a human being, and every person stopped on the street is someone's family. We need accountability, but we also need understanding. Only then can we build trust. Lawmakers listened, some moved to tears, others challenged by his call for empathy. Riley, meanwhile, found his own voice. He became a sought-after speaker at police academies, where he shared his story with new recruits. He didn't sugarcoat his mistakes. "I let fear and bias cloud my judgment. I forgot to see the person in front of me. Don't make my mistake. Be better." His honesty resonated, and many young officers thanked him for his candor. Samuel and Riley's work together was not always easy. They faced protests, angry letters, and moments of doubt. But they also witnessed moments of grace. A young officer choosing to de-escalate rather than draw his weapon. A community meeting ending in hugs instead of shouting. A family finding closure after years of pain. These moments reminded them why they kept going. One day, Samuel received a letter from a mother whose son had been killed in a police encounter years before. She wrote, "Your story gave me hope that change is possible. Thank you for not giving up." Samuel wept as he read her words, humbled by the responsibility and the possibility of healing. Riley, too, found healing in unexpected places. He reconnected with his own family, who had struggled with the shame of his arrest. Through therapy and honest conversations, they rebuilt their trust. Riley's father, a retired police officer, told him, "You made a mistake, son, but you owned it, and you're making it right. I'm proud of you." Samuel's daughter Maya grew into a passionate advocate for justice. She interned with civil rights organizations, using her family's story to inspire others. She and Riley often spoke together at youth events, showing that even the deepest wounds could lead to growth and understanding. The city itself changed, slowly but surely. Police-community relations improved, and the number of violent encounters dropped. Officers were trained to recognize their own biases, and community members were invited to participate in policy decisions. The scars of the past remained, but they were no longer ignored. Samuel and Riley's friendship deepened over time. They met regularly for coffee, sharing stories of their work and their lives. They laughed about the irony of their first meeting and marveled at how much they had both changed. "We're proof that people can grow," Samuel said one morning. Riley nodded. "And that forgiveness is the first step." Samuel's influence continued to ripple outward. He was asked to consult on national police reform initiatives, helping to design training programs that emphasized empathy, communication, and cultural awareness. He traveled to cities across the country, meeting with police chiefs, community leaders, and activists. Each conversation was different, but the message was the same. Real change starts with seeing each other as human. Riley, too, found his calling in service. He worked with formerly incarcerated people, helping them reintegrate into society and avoid the pitfalls he'd seen firsthand. He volunteered at youth centers, teaching conflict resolution and sharing his story with honesty and humility. Many young people saw in him a cautionary tale, but also a model of redemption. One summer, Samuel and Riley were invited to a national conference on justice and reconciliation. The audience was a mix of law enforcement, community organizers, and families affected by police violence. Samuel spoke first, sharing the pain and humiliation of that night, but also the hope that had grown from it. "We are all more than our worst moments," he said. "We are defined by what we do next." Riley followed, his voice steady. "I can't undo what I did, but I can use my experience to help others. I ask you all to look at the person in front of you, not just the uniform or the badge. We all have a choice, every day, to do better." The room was silent, then filled with applause. Many approached them afterward, sharing their own stories and thanking them for their courage. Samuel's family watched his transformation with pride. Elaine, once shaken by the trauma, became a leader in her own right, organizing support groups for families affected by police misconduct. Maya, now in college, wrote articles and gave speeches, her voice clear and passionate. The Carters had turned their pain into purpose, helping others find hope in the aftermath of injustice. Riley's journey was not without setbacks. There were days when the weight of his past felt unbearable, when the judgment of others stung. But he leaned on the support of Samuel, his family, and the community he served. He learned that redemption was not a destination, but a daily choice, a commitment to growth, humility, and service. As the years passed, the city became a model for others. Police departments from across the country visited to learn from their reforms. Community trust, once shattered, was slowly rebuilt. Samuel and Riley's story was taught in schools, a lesson in empathy, accountability, and the power of second chances. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Samuel and Riley walked together through a neighborhood park. Children played, families gathered, and the air was filled with laughter. Samuel turned to Riley, gratitude in his eyes. "We've come a long way," he said. Riley smiled. And we're not done yet. Years later, Samuel Carter stood at a podium in front of a packed auditorium. The city had gathered to honor his work in justice reform. He looked out at the crowd, officers in uniform, community leaders, families, and young people who had grown up hearing his story. Riley sat in the front row, his eyes shining with pride and gratitude. Samuel spoke from the heart. I once believed that justice was about punishment, but I learned that true justice is about transformation, of systems, of communities, and of ourselves. We are all capable of change, if we have the courage to face our mistakes and the humility to learn from them. The audience rose in a standing ovation. Samuel's wife Elaine and daughter Maya joined him on stage, embracing him with tears in their eyes. Riley approached, and the two men hugged, their friendship a living testament to forgiveness and growth. Cameras flashed, but for Samuel and Riley, the moment was deeply personal. A quiet victory over the darkness of their past. After the ceremony, Samuel and Riley walked together through the city streets. They passed murals painted in their honor, messages of hope and unity scrawled across the walls. Children waved, and elders nodded in respect. The city had changed, and so had they. Riley had become a mentor to hundreds of young officers, teaching them to see the humanity in every encounter. He spoke openly about his mistakes, urging others to choose empathy over fear. He found peace in service, knowing that his journey from shame to redemption had meaning beyond himself. Samuel continued his advocacy, traveling the country to share his story and push for reform. He met with lawmakers, activists, and families, always listening, always learning. He knew that the work was never finished, but he faced each day with hope, knowing that change was possible. The story of Samuel Carter and Mark Riley became a legend, a reminder that even the deepest wounds could heal, that justice and mercy could walk hand in hand. It was a story of bravery, moral conflict, and the hidden struggles of everyday people. It was a story that challenged a nation to look inward, to confront its biases, and to believe in the power of redemption. As the sun set over the city, Samuel and Riley paused on a bridge, watching the lights flicker on below. Samuel turned to Riley, his voice soft. "Thank you for choosing to change." Riley smiled. "Thank you for giving me the chance." They stood in silence, two men forever linked by a single night, and by the courage to build something better from its ashes. And so, their legacy lived on, not just in policies or headlines, but in the hearts of those who dared to hope, to forgive, and to believe that justice, at its best, is an act of depth.